Speaking of reliability, a podcast with good friends talking with you about reliability engineering topics. Welcome to Speaking of Reliability. This is Fred Schenkelberg, and I think our system's working today, Carl.
I think it is. Can you hear me, Fred?
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, and it's
Okay.
Carl Carlson's joined us today, and we tried on Monday to record, and we were plagued by slow internet connections and all kinds of weird stuff, which we were just chatting about. And so it was, 45 minutes before you found somebody you could actually talk to?
This is how it did. And if the listeners are wondering, what does this have to do with reliability? We'll get there, believe me. But just to tell the story, and then we'll segue into the reliability connection to the whole thing, is it took me a long while to reach a human. We all know that story because the humans are no longer part of customer service in many companies. And I get through to a human and they say, well, the problem is my modem, which it wasn't. My modem's working perfectly good, perfectly well. And it turns out it was just a problem at their end. And then miraculously, it solves itself. The next day, and I had a great internet. And then today there was no internet at all. And I go on and I can't get a human, so I get a bot. And the bot says I don't have an account. Of course, I do have an account, but they couldn't do anything for me because I don't have an account. And they couldn't find my account. And then after being frustrated and just walking around for a while, the internet is magically back on. It was an outage at their end.
Yeah. Yeah. And their site went recorded or indicated it was their issue or anything like that. And
long story short here, Fred, you said something very astute that opened my eyes a bit, which is we are reliability folks. We naturally do root cause analysis on anything that's a problem.
Yep.
And by the time we get in touch with customer support, we've already done the usual things. And then the customer support has us start all over.
Yeah. And, it's not the first line support people's fault. Now, bots, I think that's just a poor application to delay people. So they're so frustrated they never get back. And I think it's replacing the incredibly benign, or what's the right term, Byzantine, in the bad sense of bureaucracy, Byzantine phone trees. Remember those?
Yes, I do.
And so anyway, one thing that comes out of it is we tend to, try to troubleshoot it. Now, telecommunication equipment and modems and all that stuff, I have worked with those folks as clients, but I'm not in their firmware. I'm not in their BIOS systems, and there's still stuff I can learn. And one of the beauties now is just this morning, I'm looking at my computer had rebooted overnight, and it had a panic attack report that it was ready to send out. And I know enough to go, that doesn't look right. So I Googled it, and it looks like could be a dozen different things. So the rest of my day is going to be, disconnecting this and uninstalling that and rechecking this and then trying to recreate it or not, see if I could solve it. But that's what I mean by it's the curse of the reliability engineers is we know the process, we know the details of it. In a day-to-day work, we address problems we've never seen before. And part of our role is to go solve them. And that, when you get on customer service and they are first level and they're just reading the script and, trying to help you, as for what 90% of phone calls to them are, they don't really understand or care or have the, training to say, oh, you know what you're talking about, and let me get you somebody else, or let me change script, something like that. And it's not their fault. It's the management teams is do this, make sure they restart their modem at least 6 times.
So, right. So let's talk about the company systems and how a experienced reliability person can interact So really, there's two topics here, and I love the title, "The Curse of the Reliability Engineer." So we'll use that one. The but you have 2 points of view here. One is a company. You have the big companies like Apple and HP and lots of others. How should they design their customer service systems to be friendly to all folks, some who have no experience at all in
Mhm.
equipment and some who are very experienced? And how do they design them? And then the second thing is, how does someone who is experienced, like you and I and most of the listeners, if not all, have experience in reliability engineering, how should we interact with a system that seems increasingly frustrating, that's filled with where the human is being diminished and the bots are increasing? How should we interact with that? So I really have two threads here. One is,
Mhm.
how do you design the systems to be friendly to all folks, including people who are experienced like us? And then how do we interact best? That's what I'm seeing.
Yeah. And I think, if you're designing the system, and reliability folks rarely get involved, in my experience, with the customer service team. And in some organizations, the customer service group is outsourced to another company and they provide generic scripts to them. And I'm not even sure who they are, if it's our company or the other company. Um, but it's kind of the first level troubleshoot, try the obvious things. And I've run into one organization where the reliability team would use a fault tree, and here's what we know from the field data from our previous products. And here's, the types of potential, you know, it was this one guy, I'm trying to remember his name, but he called the customer service and got to sit in with them for a day and listen to calls and get an idea what was going on. And then he said, some of the calls you're getting, it's hard to decipher exactly what they mean. And here's a handful of questions to help you get after the biggest problems that we know are likely to happen. And here's two or three things that are most likely to solve it. And then from that became uh, a script or a tree but it was based on fault trees, is what the tool was that he brought to them. The hard part,
Well, that's really interesting.
yeah, with the hard part for the reliability engineer, until he said, until I went and sat and listened to calls, he said 9/10 of the calls was not with an engineer. And that's what we work with day in and day out, as other engineers and other technical people that know the equipment or know the system to some extent. And with rare exception, that's our world. But when somebody calls and says, well, it's not working, well, that could range from it's not plugged in, or it's been run over by a truck, or it has a software fault that a reboot will take care of pretty quickly. How do you decipher that? How do you,
Well,
so that's where they tend to focus, is because he said most of the time they were in the dark with the types of clues that were being provided until they asked clarifying questions. And then it got clearer and clearer. So the system has to recognize that the customer is different than what we are in you know, quasi professionals, root cause analysis folks.
so looking at it from the point of view of reliability, you want another, let's just say we have a company that's making widgets and you have a customer service department set up to deal with the widget complaints. And a lot of reliability folks will focus on and they should focus on the product design and manufacturing and service of widgets,
Mm-hmm.
make sure that they are reliable and safe and that type of thing. How many walk down the hall and talk to customer service? And that's really one of the points that I'm thinking you were thinking of when you started this topic, and I've been thinking about, is I've done that in a few cases, but not enough.
Yeah. No,
That's an
same.
area that I could probably improve, get a better connection to customer service, because there's where you learn a lot about the product.
Well, it's filtered through how customers expect the product to work, which is different than the people that are day in and day out, in and out of the engineering requirements document. We're trying to get it to do the specifications, which is our attempt to understand how customers want it to work. Some problems are, why is the on off switch so hard to know? I can't tell if it's turned on or not, and so I'm inadvertently turning it off before it comes on because it's gives me no indication that I did it right. I never thought of that before. you know
Well, yeah. And let me just take a side story here that's going to relate to this, but it'll take a few seconds to develop it. I was on a conference call yesterday, and I won't mention names or the company, but I was talking with someone who's very experienced in service.
Mm-hmm.
And we were talking about the reliability of equipment, that type of thing. And I said, in design, we design a product so that it will work even within anticipated misuse.
Mm-hmm.
That's the ISO terminology, that you want the product to be safe, even if it's misused in an anticipated way.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, do you do that in your service business? He says, absolutely not. We only work within the requirements that are written and stated on the product. So if a
Yeah.
person or a service technician misuses in some way or does misapplies, or the customer does, we consider that not part of service. We don't really want that service to address that.
That's where the lawyers get involved a little bit too much, is
Yeah.
they say it's not in warranty, we're not paying for that kind of thing.
Yeah, exactly. And so this is part of the topic we're talking about here. Is it's the customer service people that understand how things are sometimes misused or not done properly, because and they will understand that. I think it really behooves reliability folks to have a relationship with customer service people to see how their product's actually being used and what can go wrong, so then they can design it or manufacture it so it's more robust.
I agree 100% with that. It's the challenge is that you're going to get pushback from the design teams on saying they want to meet the specification. Well, there's not a specification for it's not easy to do whatever, or it doesn't work on my boat, or those kinds of things. So there's always a limit or a boundary, is we're not going to please every customer. And I think part of back to dealing with getting to a customer support, and especially if you're the reliability engineer calling one on with your own product, that other thread is part of the design of customer service is recognizing that there are, well, what I remember is that years and years ago there was a product I was working with, and we had what became known as a visual thermal event. We weren't allowed to use that other word. And and it turns out that the customer service team had a whole list of key phrases and terms that would trigger a immediate escalation. And so they said, well, it was smells like it's burning, or it's smoked, or it caught on fire. Those kinds of things, if it came to the customer service thing, was okay, immediate. I got to go to the next level, get a supervisor, get somebody else. And they were trained on, it's more damage control than more than anything else, unfortunately, but it would be a different realm that they would go. And I think part of the feedback of creating that relationship with the customer service team or the field service team is to understand what really is happening with our products with customers. That's invaluable, both back to the design team and for how we evaluate and specify our products. But I think equally important is teaching the customer service and field service folks that they should be able to recognize keywords and phrases of, I did restart the modem, and I did this, and I did this, and I did this, and recognizing that they just jumped ahead on your script. And if you're not trained or equipped to deal with a technical person on the phone, have another team to go do that. And
absolutely escalate it right away.
Yeah, I've run into a couple of customer service calls that they were pretty good at that. And I think there's a note in my account for my primary email service that I've had, and where my business site is hosted. and it's been there. I had an account with them for 30 years, and it's where my fmsreliability.com is hosted. And I've had issues on and off over the years and would call, and I do the due diligence of rebooting and trying this and clearing cache and all the basic stuff. But if I knew I was calling them in the past, I would hold my breath basically and be polite and say, yeah, I'm trying this, I tried that, and I'm working on this and everything else, because eventually they're going to run out of their script and hand me off to Steve, who is their senior support tech. And so I had a problem this weekend, and I called them, and they immediately put me through to Steve. I don't know if he was the only one working, but the first call person I got answered the phone right away. There was no bots, there was no phone trees, or no nothing else. And it's, hi, this customer service, how can I help you? Well, I'm having this issue. Oh, let me get your account. Let me connect you to Steve. So I think I've gone through the first level a little too many times and always ended up with this guy called Steve, who is really, really good, really sharp at what he does. And we would chat about site security and different, HTML type issues and all kinds of weird stuff. And we ended up chatting for 20 minutes. We just were catching up kind of thing about all the different threats happening in the sites and stuff like that. But they immediately put me over to them. And it wasn't anything I said that prompted that. I don't think. I think it's in my account. So that which is something you can hope for, is that you do it. But I think it's be patient. They've got a job to do. 99% of the time they can help somebody, maybe just not you. But if I need my password reset, I call them. I don't ask for Steve. They can deal with it. And, so it's setting your expectations when you're calling them to mitigate the curse a little bit.
Excellent.
One other story is years ago, it was an early smartphone, and it had a phone jack on the side to put in a wired headset, essentially, or phone earbuds, or whatever it was called back then, headset. And that thing failed. Now you could hold the phone up, but I'm on the phone 4 hours a day. I'm not going to hold my phone up. So it was not useful to me. So after the third one failed, and they send me a brand new one overnight, because it's my business phone, and they would just, we're going to honor that. We'll send you a new one, put the old one in the back box and send it back to us. Do you want to know anything about how I use the product or anything like that? And that, no. Well, that's the problem. Yeah, you're confirmed, doesn't work. We'll send you a new one. And they're sending me like a $500 phone every 3 months. And can I talk to a reliability engineer or, senior tech or somebody? Right. No, that's, we already took care of this. Bye. Because they're on a time, right? How many calls per minute they can get, so that was frustrating. I had a similar problem with an Apple product HP product after I'd left HP. And I happened to know the quality manager for that division. So I called him directly, which was an advantage of being a reliability engineering consultant, is that you know people. So it goes both ways in that regard.
So two things come to mind with me on this. It centers around excellent customer service. And I think there's a very strong linkage to reliability on that. So I think just really encourage people to explore the customer service linkage. But it comes down to a couple of things. First of all, is word of mouth. The companies that do an excellent job of customer service get word of mouth, and it spreads like wildfire. You start hearing about, a company like Apple that does a really good job, I think, on customer service phone calls. You actually reach a human being, and they listen to you, and they take care of the concern. That is a huge plus to the product acceptance, and actually a plus to the product reliability, because the customer service can help diagnose something and get this thing working, and can save the day, so to speak. The second thing
but they also feed it back into the the development teams and so on. They look for the
Yeah.
systemic issues. Remember Dell when they first became a major computer company, their customer service was over the top, absolutely excellent. And there was survey after survey, and I was at HP at the time, came out saying even though they have a higher failure rate, say for their laptops, because their customer service is so good that their customers are more brand loyal to that brand because they know
Yeah.
they're backed up.
So there's a really strong linkage to reliability. The other thing I'll mention is that it just popped into me when I was listening to you is that we can work with a customer service inside a company
Mm-hmm.
to design a system similar to the way the medical industry uses triage.
Mm-hmm.
In triage, if you have a serious injury, they'll take you right in right away and life threatening, that kind of thing. They'll differentiate by an initial interview whether you can sit there and wait or, without harm, or
Right.
whether you need to be seen right away. And it would seem like rather than one size fits all, which is where the bots end up often, or the customer service at the initial contact, it seems like a simple triage type interview would differentiate people and then escalate or not accordingly.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that might be what triggered me getting put through straight to Steve is I mentioned the problem and the HTML error codes and some of the possible sources I've already evaluated. I think they said, "Oh, okay, you need to talk to Steve." That might have
Yeah,
been the trigger. I have no
right,
idea what you're
exactly.
talking about.
And I don't want to offend the bots. If there's any bots listening right now, I don't want to offend you. The and of course tongue in cheek here, but I think with better artificial intelligence that can have triage baked in,
Mm-hmm.
the bots could then ask the questions that actually matter rather than following a long checklist and making you do things that are unnecessary and then upsetting the customer base.
I just had to laugh at this poor person on is a cable connection to the house, and a tree branch came through and broke it. It was on the ground. It was an open circuit, and she insisted that I reboot the modem, and I did it again. And she says, "I'm not seeing your modem." Well, I think I know why, which I told you at the top, 20 minutes ago, is the cable's broken. It's separated from the house. It's on the ground sparking. And she didn't buy that. It's a low voltage cable. And like, no wonder it's not working, but I'm not qualified to run a line to the pole to the house. I think I need a service person to do it. So they set an appointment for like 3 days out. And the morning of when we're expecting them to show up, and we rearranged our schedule so somebody would be home and all that stuff. And they said, "Looks like the problem's cleared." So we canceled the appointment. And it was two
Yes.
weeks before we got them out there to fix it. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh my gosh. So don't make your customer service person upset with you. I have no idea if that was the cause of that, but like, I don't think it's fixed. The
I,
cable's still laying on the
I could
ground.
see that. I can see that. So
So,
just rounding this out, I mean, we started with just a little frustration, where we're bringing up customer service, but we knew this would quickly get into there's a connection to reliability.
yep.
And I strongly recommend people to learn more about your customer service department because they are a wealth of information and they interface with your customers and you're going to learn about your product. And of course, that all goes back to design, like you said. And you can also then help the customer service do a better job by understanding where, like diagnostics, so to speak,
Yep.
which is as you pointed out, the fault tree analysis approach.
It is. And it also is, there's always things we ship with that we're not sure about. We saw it occasionally, but it's just not something we had the time or energy to solve. We had other bigger problems to do. Put triggers in there to say, if they describe it this way, it might be this. We want to know about that. Set up alerts or help them improve their ability to interpret what's going on with what you already know. They don't need to start from scratch. And so we can provide them, field service and customer service, a bunch of useful information, and vice versa. We get stuff from them. So if you're listening to
So,
this, and we'd love to hear your rants about great customer service or the lack thereof. But more importantly is, what do you do about it? How do you work with your customer service or field service or maintenance teams or installation teams, those kinds of folks that actually get to interface with customers on a regular basis? And like Carl says, it's a wealth of information. So what's your experience with that? How tightly are you bound or working with those folks, and what benefits are you seeing? That'd be really great information to talk about in another episode. You can do that by getting in touch with us at accendoreliability.com/go/SOR. And you can also, there's a couple of ways to get in touch with us there. Carl and I and the other hosts are available through LinkedIn and our About pages, where hopefully you don't need to call customer service to find how to connect with us.
That's right. And we are live people, and we will answer your questions. But I got to go, Fred, because I have to contact my customer service. So I got to get going.
Get your cable running again, yeah?
Yes.
At least it worked for the last couple minutes, so we're good. All
go.
right, thanks, Carl. We'll talk to you soon.
Thanks, Fred.
Thanks for listening to Speaking of Reliability. We invite you to join the conversation. If you have a question or a topic that you think we should discuss in a future show, please let us know. You can find a comment box below the episode show notes, or just leave a note as part of a review on iTunes.